Uh, so welcome to today's lecture. Today we will be continuing with our discussion on matrix concentration inequalities. This is the third lecture in the series. We might have two more lectures on this, but let us see how much we are able to cover. So before delving into today's lecture, let us just briefly recall what we did in the previous lecture because the material is kind of new to most of the people, new in the sense that it might be difficult to grasp or get used to very quickly. So we'll just do a quick recap and we will discuss important points from last lecture. Okay. So the first thing which we discussed in the last lecture was that if Y is a random Hermitian matrix, then the probability that its largest eigenvalue is greater than or equal to t is bounded from above by this expression. Okay. So we broke down the inequality on the right hand side. We saw that infimum is just to optimize the bound. E raised to the power minus theta t comes out from the moment generating function trick, and then the only result which we wanted to prove was bringing in trace into the picture, and for that the key point was the following intermediate result: lambda max of theta y is equal to lambda max of exponential of theta y. We proved this by expanding left hand side and right hand side the matrix exponentials and all those things. We kind of generalized this result, generalized in the sense that by for a class of functions which can be called as the standard matrix functions, and we generalized it to what is referred to as the spectral mapping theorem. Okay. So this result, which we proved by using matrix exponential and all those things, we could have directly used spectral mapping theorem and proved it. Then, after these two things, we proved a similar bound for lambda min of y. And in the proof, the key trick or the main idea, the rest of the proof was more or less along the same lines. We made this switch or a similar idea. So we will be using in what we are going to discuss today. We will be using these two results again. Okay, in a different context, but we will be referring to these two results again today. Then in the next part of the lecture, we discussed the expectation bounds. So the expectation bounds on lambda max, they looked something like this. Log exponential trace e to the theta y. Okay, and here the proof basically used Jensen's inequality and the proof of above. So this is all we did for proving this. We used the ideas that we used to prove 1a, and then we applied Jensen's inequality and we obtained the thing. And then we also had similarly for expected value of lambda min of y. Okay. Then in the third part of the lecture, we were interested in bounds for sums of independent random matrices. So for the scalar case, we found the bounds for the sums of independent random vectors or scalars by using the moment generating function trick, in which the key was that the exponential of sum can be broken down into products. But we had some discussions, and then we saw that the MGF trick fails. So it cannot be extended to the matrix case. We then explored if trace works. Then trace, we discovered that trace also does not work. Then towards the end, we asserted that the cumulant generating function can the subadditivity of cumulant generating function can be generalized to the matrix case as well. And we took just one step towards that generalization on how it can be extended to the matrix case. And at the end of the lecture, we discussed Lieb's theorem. Okay, so Lieb's theorem says literally, it says that if we have a fixed Hermitian matrix H, then the function which is given by trace exponential H plus logarithm of A is a concave map on the convex cone of D cross D positive definite matrices. Okay, so we will not be proving the proving Lieb's theorem, and we will start today's discussion by proving a corollary of Lieb's theorem. So just to tell you about the flow that we will be having in today's discussion is that first we will uh, prove subadditivity of the cumulant generating functions. Then we will prove the master bounds for sums of independent random matrices, not just Hermitian. Okay, this is what we will prove. And then in the third part of the lecture, we will prove what are known as the matrix Chernoff bounds. Okay, we will use the master bounds, and matrix Chernoff bounds comes as a special case of the master bounds where the eigenvalues of the random Hermitian matrix are bounded. Okay, so that is we will use that and some other results to prove the matrix Chernoff bound. So these are the three things that we will be discussing today. And to get today's discussion started, we will start with a corollary of Lieb's theorem. So let us say that H is a fixed Hermitian matrix and X is a random Hermitian matrix. Okay, then the corollary says that expected value of trace exponential h plus x is less than or equal to trace exponential h plus logarithm of expected value of exponential of x. Okay. So before going into the proof, we will just eyeball the inequality once and see if any of this makes sense in the sense of in relation to whatever we have read till now, we have studied till now. So this is basically the left hand side is the expected value of a function of x, and the right hand side is the function. The function is trace exponential h plus something of expected value of x. Okay, and by Jensen's inequality we have this. Okay, we can apply Jensen's inequality because from Leib's theorem we know that it is a concave map. Trace exponential h plus log a. So trace exponential h plus, we need a log term here. Okay, so we will just quickly, to use that trick, we will just say that x is equal to, or we will define y is equal to e raised to the x. Then this will mean that x is equal to logarithm of y, and then the proof is just 2 lines now. H plus log y. Okay, so we know by Leib's theorem that this is a concave map. So this is less than or equal to trace exponential h plus log expected value of y. This is y, and what we get is trace exponential h plus log expected value e raised to the power x, and this is precisely what we wanted on the right hand side. So the proof is quite simple. We just used the Jensen's inequality. Next, we will prove using this corollary. We will prove subadditivity of the cumulant generating function. Okay, we will sort of follow the same flow for proving the matrix Chernoff bounds as well, where we will first prove the subadditivity and then we will prove the actual theorem. So yeah, so this is actually quite a decent introduction to the flow of proofs. So we have a finite sequence of independent random Hermitian matrices. Okay, so then the expected value of trace exponential sum k theta x of k is less than or equal to trace exponential sum over k log expected value of e to the theta xk. So we can immediately see the we can immediately see the connection between the corollary that we proved and the subadditivity. Left hand side we have expected value trace exponential, expected value and trace exponential. Right hand side we have trace exponential and log of expected value of exponential. So right hand side here also we have trace exponential, log of expected value of exponential. Okay, so but here we had h plus log y or h plus x. We do not have h here. So the whatever needs to be done, something has to be done for the expression inside the summation. Okay, so that so there is one trick for that proof, and it basically solves the proof. Okay, so we will prove it for k is equal to 2 and theta is equal to 1, and the proof can be generalized very easily. Okay, so just to give you an idea of how the proof works. So expected value of trace exponential x1 plus x2. Okay, since x1 and x2 are independent, we can write this as follows: trace exponential x1 plus x2. Okay, so for expected value with respect to the second, with respect to x2, x1 is a constant matrix. So we get what we needed for this corollary. So this was the only trick that we had, because when we are taking expectation with respect to x2, then x1 is constant for it. Then using the corollary, what we obtained is expected value trace exponential x1 plus log expected value e to the x2. Okay, directly applying the corollary. Now this is constant and we have x1. So again applying the corollary, we will have trace exponential log of expected value of x2 plus log of expected value of x1. Okay, so if we have n, rather than having two sums, if we have n many, if k is equal to n for any random k, we can just apply this that many times and we will get the same thing. If we multiply it by theta, the result does not change. So there is one exercise that you need to do at your home, and you should take your time for this, is that is thinking about how can we apply this corollary, because this corollary needed some conditions that H is a fixed Hermitian matrix and then X is a random matrix. So in the second step specifically, we considered this to be a fixed Hermitian matrix, but what we have in our expression that xk's are Hermitian. Okay, so some work needs to be done to prove that if x2 is Hermitian, then log something 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 will also be Hermitian. So at your home, do work it out yourself on why this is Hermitian and that sort of thing. Okay, so just take your time and do that. It is a good exercise to feel comfortable with the material. Okay, so moving on to the next part, we will use the sub additivity of the cumulant generating function to prove the master bounds for sums of independent random Hermitian matrices. Okay, I'm sorry. I think earlier I mentioned that they are any general matrices, but not. When I was introducing it, so this is random Hermitian matrices, because all the results we have proved for random Hermitian matrices. So the theorem is, it looks quite tedious, but it is actually not if we break it down into simpler expressions. Okay, so what we have is expected the theorem, expected value of the largest eigenvalue of sum of random Hermitian matrices is bounded from above infimum theta greater than 0, 1 over theta log trace exponential. We are familiar with this log trace exponential. We discussed it in the first lecture as well. Log exponential e raised to the power theta xk. Okay, and similarly we will have a bound for the smallest eigenvalue as well, which is k xk is greater than or equal to supremum over theta less than 0, 1 over theta log trace exponential sum over k log expected e raised to the power theta x Okay, so this is the first part in the sense that bounds on the expected value of the largest and smallest eigenvalue. The second part, they are just the probability bounds. So like we discussed in the previous lectures, we had these sorts of bound for individual matrices, and now we are just extending those bounds to sums of independent random Hermitian matrices. So just after writing this expression, we will look at these bounds more carefully, but I'm just writing it down because we will be using it for proving the matrix Chernoff bound as well. Log exponential e raised to the power theta xk. So you don't have to remember these bounds. Okay, you can always look it up even in the tests. In the test that is coming up, you will most likely be allowed to use these bounds, or if required, they will be given in the paper as well. So you're not expected to remember these complicated expressions. Infimum theta less than 0, e raised to the power minus theta t, trace exponential k log expected value e raised to the power theta xk. Okay, so we will just see the similarities. So if we look at what we had last time, so expectation of a single matrix y, this is the largest eigenvalue of single matrix y, was infimum because we want to optimize the bound. Then 1 by theta log expected value trace exponential theta y. Okay, so just remember this log exponential trace, sorry, log expected value trace exponential. Here also we have something same, something similar, log trace exponential. The expected value is sort of somehow interchanged, but they are just similar. Okay, and in fact, I will not be doing the proof here, and I will leave the proof also as an exercise for you to do at home. All you have to do is for all the four results, all you have to do is to start from these inequalities. Expected value of lambda max of y, then similarly for expected value of lambda min, and for these probabilities, you have to start from these inequalities, then apply the subadditivity of cumulant generating function. Okay, so and then we will get the result. So it is very simple algebraic manipulation, but just doing it yourself and going through the process once will make you more comfortable with these bounds. Okay, they look very tedious, but if we proceed from first principles and think about it, they are not that complicated. They are long, they are of course complicated to write it out, but conceptually they are not that complicated. Okay, we will be using these bounds today directly to prove the matrix Chernoff bounds. So as we discussed earlier as well, the matrix Chernoff bounds are sort of, we have these master bounds for sums of independent random Hermitian matrices. If we make additional assumptions on the nature of these random Hermitian matrices, we can do more with the bounds. Okay, and that is what we are going to do in our next discussion, which we are going to have on the matrix Chernoff bounds. So next we will discuss matrix Chernoff bounds. Okay, so the bounds itself, I mean the statement is very long, but before going into what the matrix Chernoff bounds are, we will just prove a lemma, which is again uh, MGF and CGF bound. I mean, okay, sorry, maybe so this is not exactly subadditivity, but like for proving the master bounds, we proved an intermediate lemma, and then we use that lemma to prove. Similarly, we will prove an intermediate lemma, and then we will prove that we will use this lemma to prove the matrix Chernoff bounds. Okay, so the difference is that suppose X is a random matrix such that we have lambda min of X and lambda max of X is bounded. Okay, so we have an additional information that the eigenvalues of the random matrix X, they belong to this interval between 0 to L. Okay, and if we have this additional information, then we can bound the MGF in the following way. This is the first, and we can bound the cumulant generating function okay, so for all real theta. So this is the first claim and this is the second claim. I mean, if we know the first claim, the second claim is quite simple. Okay, so one thing here which we need to be very careful about, that this is a different kind of order. This is not greater than or less than which we are used to. We will briefly discuss it in just a few moments. But if A is true, then we just have to take logarithm on both sides. Okay, this can definitely be done when if x's and everything is scalar, because logarithmic is a monotone function which will not change the order. So we can just take logarithm, exponential will get consumed by the logarithm and we will directly get the result. But here we have a different sort of order which is on the eigenvalues or the positive semi-definite order. So we use kind of a squiggle to denote this. So if we have, so I'll just change the color for this. So if we have A and this squiggle less than H, so this is true by definition if and only if A minus H is let us just say H minus A is positive semi-definite. Okay, so one can think about this as an order on the eigenvalues per se. So if we consider A as a diagonal matrix and H also as a diagonal matrix, then when we subtract H from A, the eigenvalues are still positive. It's positive semi-definite. Okay, so then we say that H, the eigenvalues of H are greater than or equal to the eigenvalues of A, then we will have H minus A as positive semi-definite. So this is one semantic issue. So here also we are saying sort of the same thing, that the eigenvalues of informally or intuitively, the eigenvalues of the matrix exponential is bounded by this term. Okay, so this is sort of what we are trying to say, that we have to get an intuitive feel, a bound on the eigenvalues of the expression on the left and right hand side. So that is why we say MGF and CGF bound here. We will get started with the proof, which again does not use any complicated machinery. But it is just that all the proofs that we are seeing, they are, I mean, they use several ideas, and they are the proofs work out by stitching together several simple ideas. The ideas are not complicated. They are very simple ideas, but there are many of them. So that might be one reason why it might be difficult to grasp these things immediately, because the ideas are so many and the inequalities are several, inequalities are multiple in number and all those things. Okay, so here we introduce a different kind of trick which we have not really used till now, I think. So if we consider a scalar function, okay, so exponential is convex. So the claim is that f of x is less than or equal to f0 plus f of L minus f0 divided by L x for all x in 0 to L. So here we had, in the statement of the lemma, we had an interval 0 to L. Okay, and in that interval 0 to L, we are trying to analyze the nature of the exponential. So whenever we look at an exponential, our first the instinct is you trying to somehow bring in the convexity of the exponential, and this result also follows from the convexity. So if we just rearrange the expression, what we get is fx minus f0 divided by x is less than or equal to fl minus f0 divided by L. Okay, and if we just plot for any convex function. So actually this is true for any convex function. Let us just say this is the function. Okay, and I'll just maybe change the color. So let us suppose that this is the function, and we have 0 here, and we have L here, and we have x here. Okay, so what we are trying to say here is that so this becomes our f of x, this is f of L, and this point is f of 0. So fx minus f0 is this triangle. Okay, so fx minus f0 divided by 0 minus x, and here we are looking at this. Okay, sorry. Here we are looking at this triangle. Okay, so this is what we are looking at. You can again, I will advise you to mull over it and see why this is true, and more specifically, in what case we will have an equality here. Okay, just think about it. It will make you more comfortable with the material, but I think it is quite straightforward. So we will use this result as it is. Okay. So this is true for any convex function. So we have the exponential is a convex function. So we will have e to the theta x is less than or equal to f of 0 is 1 plus e to the theta L minus 1 by L into x. Okay. So we used a different trick. So the flow of the proof is that we used a different trick that exploits the convexity of the function to obtain this result. But this is true for scalars. We want to uh, extend it for matrices. Okay, so this result is true here because okay, so we want to extend it for matrices. Now, when we have to extend it for matrices, immediately we come, we look at the utility of the assumption that the eigenvalues they belong to the interval 0 to L. Okay, so we can somehow bring this up. So there is something called a transfer rule, which we will maybe discuss after we finish this proof, because I do not want to interrupt the flow of the proof. For now, let us assume that we can extend it to the two matrices directly. Okay, and we will just glibly just write this in the following sentence: by applying transfer rule. Okay, so when we apply transfer rule, what we get is we will see what the transfer rule is, and we will also see the idea of the proof of how to prove it. So we just apply the transfer rule here. We get e to the raised to the power theta L minus L into x. Okay. So we just converted the scalar to matrices. One of the important things in all our discussions is that, like we had in the previous lecture, we spent some amount of time on in discussing which tricks can be carried forward from the scalar case to the matrix case. Here also, in the discussion for the concentration inequalities for matrices, because scalars came first, then matrices, the instinct is to use the results from scalar and try to extend it to the matrix case. So most of the work or to develop the concepts, it is important to recognize which tricks can be carried from scalar to matrices. So here, this is an example of what can be carried from scalar to matrices. And we saw that this is something that cannot be carried from scalar to matrices. Okay, so these are some subtle points for which we need some very strong fundamentals to quickly see what can be carried or what cannot be carried. So you should spend some time. I will point it out in between again and again what you should spend time on, whether to see. The expression that we had here in the proof. This was another example of how we can carry it from scalar to matrices. You should spend some time on it, but never mind. Anyway, so we have this, and after that, the result is quite simple. We just take expectation on both sides, and what we obtain is okay. Here also, actually, you should spend some time because this is not simply less than or greater than. This is a different notion of order that we have, and just spend some time on thinking why expectation satisfies the linearity or the does not disturb the monotonicity of this operation. Okay, if this is true, why taking expectations on both sides does not change the order? All right. So next, we again write this as e raised to the power theta L minus 1 L into e to the x. Okay, so here what we have used is in the scalar case, we had 1 plus x is less than equal to e raised to the x. Again, we have a matrix version of this inequality, and then we used the matrix version of this inequality. Okay, so you have to be careful of when it can be extended. And again, I'm repeating myself. Just be careful on what tricks can be extended from scalar to the vector case. Okay, so this basically finishes the part one of our proof. We have proved what we set out to prove. And then the next result, we saw that if we just take logarithm, we will get the next result. Logarithm is operator monotone. Okay, and you should definitely spend some time on seeing why we can take log on both sides without disturbing this. Okay, so this you should spend time on. So after we have done this, we will move to the final part of today's lecture, the magnum opus of today's lecture, that is the matrix Chernoff bounds. It will take some time for me to just write the bounds, but just bear with me. Again, we have xk these are independent random Hermitian matrices with the same dimension. With the same dimension, let us say D cross D. These are all D cross D, and and we assume that the eigenvalues are again bounded. So we say, so this is the first, and then the second consideration is that zero, the minimum eigenvalue is non-negative, and the largest eigenvalue is bounded L, and this is true for all k. Okay. Then we introduce a notation. I mean, just for simplicity, this is okay. Then comes a key point. I will maybe change the orientation. Okay. So just want to see if it is, yeah. So it is still working. So because the theorem is very long, it has changed the orientation of the screen. Okay. So next we do a definition. We define minimum and maximum eigenvalue of expected value of y. Okay, so y is a matrix. So when we say expected value of y, we simply take the expectations of all its random entries, and whatever we get is the uh, matrix that is the expected value of y, the expected matrix. We can call it something like that. So we introduce the notion here: mu min is equal to lambda min of expected value of y is equal to lambda min of summation k expected value of xk. So this is one new notation that we have. Similarly, mu max is lambda max of expected value of y. This is lambda max sum over k expected value of xk. All right. Then we come to our proof or the statement of the Chernoff bound for theta greater than 0. For theta greater than 0, we have expected value of lambda min of y is greater than or equal to 1 minus e raised to the power minus theta by theta mu min minus 1 by theta L log D. This is one thing. And then the expected value of lambda max of y is less than or equal to 1 minus e raised to the power minus theta by theta mu max plus 1 over theta L log D. Okay. So this looks a complicated expression. So let us just take a detour, not exactly a detour, but just to understand it in a compact way. If we substitute theta equal to 1, then what we obtain is the expected value of lambda min of y is greater than or equal to 0.63 mu min. So we substituted theta is equal to 1 in this expression minus L log D. Okay. And we have expected value of lambda max of y is less than or equal to 1.72 mu max plus L log D. Okay. So what I want you to think about is the conceptual difference the most important point is the conceptual difference between expected value of lambda min y and mu min. Okay, so you might want to take a few examples. Just take 2 cross 2 matrices where the entries follow some distribution. Just they can be toss of fair coin. Find out what is the lambda min of y, the expected value of lambda min. Find out the left hand side expected value of lambda min of y and find out mu min. Then compare and see how these two manifest. Okay, there is a very subtle difference between lambda min of expected value of y and expected value of lambda min y. We cannot simply take the expected value inside, which is clearly shown by this bound. So the main conceptual takeaway at this point of time is to understand the difference between these two terms. Okay, once we have a firm grasp on the difference between these two these two terms, then we have a theoretical bound that they are not the same. First thing is that they are not the same, but they are not too different as well. 0.63 times, and this is a fluctuation or a deviation factor that depends on how much the eigenvalues can change and how big is the matrix. Okay, so first and foremost, what you should definitely do at home is to pick few examples, calculate what is the expected value of lambda min y, calculate what is mu min, and see for yourself what happens with this bound. So this is something which you should definitely do at home. Okay, so these were the bounds on the expectation. We can similarly write the bounds on we can write probability bounds as well, which this is what we have been doing since past 2-3 lectures. So lambda min of y less than equal to 1 minus epsilon mu min d times e raised to the power minus epsilon mu min divided by L. Here epsilon is in the range 0 to 1. So here epsilon belongs to this range. Then we can write this thing also. This is true for epsilon greater than or equal to 0. Okay, again, if we simplify this expression, okay, just consider 1 minus epsilon is t. What we will obtain is probability that lambda min of y is less than or equal to t times mu min. Okay, so this sort of looks similar with the scalar Chernoff bounds which we had. 2 sigma square we will have. So L divided by mu min will become that thing, and lambda max of y greater than or equal to t mu max for this t belongs to 0 to 1. Okay, so again, do not worry about the exact inequalities. You can always look that up. Even in the exams, uh, I'll not be testing your memory of whether you remember it or not. If these inequalities are needed, either you will be allowed to have a sheet where you can write all these inequalities, or you will be given it in the question paper itself. Okay, but there are a few things which you should sort of remember, that what does this bound look like, and what does this bound look like, or what are, yeah, so something like that you should remember these things conceptually or informally, what it is doing, sub exponential, sub Gaussian, and all those things. Because if you know these things, it is fine. If you do not know, then also it is okay. Right. So this was for our understanding of what we want to prove. Next, we will just, last part of today's lecture is that we will jump onto the proof. So I will again go into the landscape mode for the proof. So we jump to the proof. So we will prove the maximum and minimum in two steps. So the first will be for maximum eigenvalue bounds. Okay, so if we just recall our CGF bounds from before, we will have it handy with us. Log exponent expected value e raised to the power theta xk less than or equal to g of theta expected value of xk, where g of theta was e to the theta l minus 1 by l for theta greater than 0. Okay, so this was the CGF bounds which we have, and we have just written it in a compact form. If you don't believe me, this was the bound that we have. So we replace this by g of theta. Okay, and x was replaced by x of k. We, we want to have this handy with us. Next, we will use the master bounds which we proved at the beginning of the lecture. Okay, so the master bounds for sum of independent Hermitian whatever. So we had expected value of lambda max of sum of k xk is less than equal to infimum over all theta greater than 0 1 by theta log trace exponential sum over k log expected value exponential theta x of k. Okay, so this is we proved it at the beginning of today's lecture. So here is one fact which you should verify at home. Should look at the proof. You can refer to various references online. Is that if A less than H, and where this order is in terms of the positive semi-definiteness of matrices, which we introduced earlier. So it basically means that H minus A is positive semi-definite. Okay, this is what it means. If this is true, then trace of e to the a is less than or equal to. This is the usual less than or equal to because trace will be a real number, trace of exponential of h. So you should read online, spend some time on it, and see why this is true, and make a mental note of it, so that, yeah, so that you basically understand what's going on. Okay, so if we have to write it in words, we will say that trace of trace of matrix exponential is monotone with respect to the semi-definite order. Okay. So when we take exponential and we take the trace, since it is monotone, the relations they do not change. So just spend some time on it, read on the internet, look at resources, or if you have a linear algebra book or whatever, or why this is true. We will not prove it in the lecture. So since this is true, we can do some modifications. Okay, we will use this lambda max sum over k xk infimum over theta greater than 0 1 over theta log trace exponential sum over k g theta expected value of xk. Okay, since the trace of an exponential does not change, so here what we did is that in the CGF bounds, so in the CGF bounds we proved the following. Okay, so this is the squiggle. We proved the following, and if this is true, then trace is monotone. So because trace is monotone, we can the inequality is not affected. Okay, so rather than having this expression, so what we have done is that we have substituted this log e theta xk by g theta expected value of xk. Okay, so using the monotonicity and all those things, this is we have made substitution. So in the next step we will why do we have read? Okay, so in the next step we can write this as infimum over theta greater than 0 1 by theta log trace exponential g theta k expected value of xk, just rewriting the uh, above term. So we can actually write expect sum of expected value of xk as expected value of y. Okay, so infimum over theta greater than 0 1 over theta log trace exponential g of theta expected value of y. This is y. Okay, next we use another fact which you should again verify at home as a self exercise. Uh, if this we actually used in the previous lecture as well, without quite referring to this, I will leave it to you to figure out where did we use this fact without stating it. Okay, so if H is Hermitian, then e raised to the H is positive definite. Okay, when e raised to the H is positive definite, then it means that we can replace trace. Trace is the sum of eigenvalues. We can upper bound it by d times the eigenvalues, d times the largest eigenvalue, and what we obtain is infimum theta greater than 0 1 by theta log d times lambda max. Okay, and we will have exponential of g theta expected value of y. So here we replace the trace, by d times of lambda max. So if we have lambda 1 plus lambda 2, okay, so let's say if we, I think this should be obvious, but anyway, if we have two eigenvalues, lambda min plus lambda max, this is less than or equal to 2 times lambda max. Okay, similarly, if you have d many eigenvalues, so that is what we have done here. Now, we saw in the previous class that expected value of, sorry, exponential of lambda max theta y. We proved it in the previous class, and we, at the beginning of the class, we said that we will be using that inequality again. We could also argue this result by saying that this is follows from the spectral mapping theorem. Okay, so we are basically done. So infimum, so lambda max of exponential, we will replace by exponential of lambda max. Theta greater than 0, 1 by theta log d exponential g theta into lambda max exponential of y. Okay, so we used another result. We actually pulled g theta out of the lambda max as well, and we use the fact that g theta is greater than 0 for theta greater than 0. Okay, so if g theta is less than 0, then this lambda max will become lambda min, as we saw earlier that lambda max of minus a is minus of lambda min of a or something like that. Because g theta is greater than 0 for theta greater than 0, we can pull it out without disturbing the inequality. So it turns out that this does not have a closed form solution. Okay, does not have a closed form solution, so we cannot actually evaluate the infimum. The result that we wanted, or the statement of the Chernoff bounds, it says 1 minus e raised to the power minus theta theta mu min and these things. So this we can obtain. So if you see, this is mu max. Okay, so this is mu max. So we can, and when we substitute g theta, we will obtain those results. So all that we have to do is to substitute theta by theta over L, and everything will work out. So I will leave that to leave it for you to do. Another exercise that you should do at home. So this week has a lot of exercises that you should do at home just to get used to these steps. Is the proof of the probability bounds. The proof of the probability bounds are, I mean, they follow, the steps are exactly similar. In fact, they are very similar. You can look it up in the book as well, but the statements are very similar. You should prove it by yourself. Okay, so when you do it once, you will get comfortable with the ideas. So I will not prove it here. I mean, best yeah. So I will leave the leave it for you to work out this part. Probability of not exactly this part. Sorry, this part. Okay, so you can refer to the book as well, and then understand all the steps and do it yourself by hand on paper. All right. So next, the second part, we move to the minimum eigenvalue bounds. We saw last time in the previous lecture as well, when we were doing lambda min, when we were doing the proof for lambda min, we followed almost the same steps that we did for lambda max with some subtle changes. Okay, so as we did for the lambda max case, we will start with the master tail bounds, and we have lambda min k, xk is greater than or equal to supremum over theta less than 0. So here it is important to note that theta is less than 0. Note here. Okay, so this will make a difference. We have log trace exponential sum over k log exponential e raised to the power theta xk. Okay. Now, if we just recall the CGF bound, we had log expected value e raised to the power theta xk is g theta to expected value of xk. Again, I mean, and we had g of theta is equal to e to the theta l minus 1 by l theta less than 0. So this I was actually true for all theta, but here since we have to do for theta less than 0, we are considering it for theta less than 0. Now when theta is less than 0, g theta less than 0 for theta less than 0. Okay. Now since we have theta less than 0, what we will do is expected value of lambda min of summation k xk greater than or equal to supremum theta less than 0 1 by theta log trace exponential g theta expected value of xk. Okay, so one thing which you should think about is that why can we replace log exponential log by this term? Just mull over it for some time. Why is this true? Because we are considering only values of theta that are less than 0 and g of theta is less than 0. Okay, so just to think about why these things are true, because g of theta is negative and we are replacing with a more negative term. Does this inequality actually work out or it does not work out? I mean, it is definitely true, but just try to think of why it does not mess up this inequality. Okay, you can refer to the textbook as well. Then using the previous step, I mean, what we did last time, 1 by theta log, we replace by the following. Lambda max exponential g theta expected value of y. Okay. Then we replace lambda max of exponential. This is also same as the last step, which I mean last step in the sense that what I mean to say is what we did last time. And another subtlety that we have here is g theta, and we will get lambda min of expected value of. Okay, we will have lambda min of expected value of y. Lambda max has changed into lambda min because g of theta is negative. So when we pull g of theta outside, then it will change max to min. So this is equal to supremum theta less than 0, 1 by theta log of log d plus g theta mu min. Okay, so the result can be obtained. I mean, after that, the last step is this change of variables, and we will get the exact result when we replace theta by minus theta by L. So that will make sure that theta is positive. There is one small subtle point here because these inequalities are valid for theta greater than 0. So theta and minus theta, just Uh, and then the probability bounds, again I leave it as an exercise for you, just to get you practiced on whatever is happening. And that will be all for today's lecture.